The moral of the story is you have to make sure that you are advocating for yourself, and you have to be the one that sets this up, because nobody's going to do it for you. If someone does it for you, you are in an amazing place, and I give you all of the props in the world. But more than likely, you are going to have to be the one that advocates for yourself. Welcome to the Your Diabetes Insider podcast, where we take all of the mysteries of blood sugar control, focusing on nutrition, exercise, and any of the other 40 plus factors that may impact your blood sugar. If you don't know me, my name is Ben Zeal. I'm a registered dietitian, certified diabetes educator, strength and conditioning coach, and I've lived myself with type 1 diabetes for over 20 years, and I am here to share everything that I have learned in both my personal and professional experience so you can live that incredible diabetes life. So get ready and let's dive right into today's episode. What is going on? Welcome to this episode of the Your Diabetes Insider podcast. And today, it is a very important day. It is Labor Day, but beyond that, what's very important about it is a lot of people are starting school tomorrow. If you're in college, you might already be back in school. If you live in the South, you might already be back in school, but a lot of people are going back to school the day after Labor Day. I remember growing up in the Midwest, that was always a thing. And it sometimes was a little bit rough because you're thinking, oh man, summer's so vast and so big when it starts out, and then suddenly, boom, you blink, it's over, and you're back in the classroom. And so with that, I want to make sure that you're set up for success from a blood sugar standpoint, because I feel like it's one of the things that it's exceptionally important. And if you don't prepare in advance for it, it can be an issue to maintain great blood sugars. And I want to go just through a few pretty prominent things that you should probably be doing if you have diabetes and you're in school, if you're in college, if your kid has diabetes, just to make sure you're set up for success. Because at the end of the day, all we want is a level playing field. We're not asking for the earth, moon, and stars and everything to be absolutely perfect. But what we're asking for is if there's a low blood sugar during an exam, or, hey, I need an extension on my homework because of X, Y, and Z, diabetes related, to have that ability. And so it's not held against you. So other people who have a functional pancreas are able to thrive, but you're not, because that's not fair to you as a person with diabetes. And you need to advocate for yourself. So without further ado, let's dive right in. So few things. First thing I can say, and this is something that I did a post about it recently. I know it's extremely important, but I would say if you have diabetes and you're in school, again, doesn't matter what age you are, if you can get a 504 plan with accommodations, it would be imperative and it would be in your best interest to do so. And this will help cover you for those things I just mentioned, for exams, for homework, for excused absences that might be related to diabetes. Because otherwise, again, think about it. I know in my high school growing up, there was a thing, I don't know if this is a thing across other schools, but I remember you have final exams at the end of each semester, right? At the end of the first semester and a second semester. But there was a rule where if you hit certain guidelines, and some of those guidelines were, I think they were grade related, don't quote me, but I'm pretty sure it was grade related, it was like attendance related, and it was tardiness related. If you checked all the boxes, you could exempt 2 of your exams, which would mean you didn't have to take them. So if you did an amazing job during the actual semester, you could take the 2 worst exams off of your list. And I think you can only exempt, if it was a year-long class, like 1 of the 2. So you could pick the middle of the year or the end of the year. You get the idea. At the end of the day, it's 2 fewer exams that you have to take. And I'm not mad about that. No one was mad about that, right? Because it's one less study marathon. And so with that, imagine you're a person living with diabetes and you're really excited. Oh, I'm going to exempt these exams. And I think you got up to 5 excused tardies and no unexcused tardies. But let's just pretend that you had some blood sugar issues in the morning at times and you ended up late a certain number of times. You could have lost your exam exemptions because you didn't have accommodation, even though it was something out of your control. Maybe your pump site failed, right? Maybe you had a low blood sugar at 3 a.m. and you were exhausted and you wanted to be able to thrive in the classroom. So these are things that the 504 would help cover against. And I'm not an attorney by any stretch of the imagination. So I'm sure if you need to get some legal advice on this, that would be the person to go to. But what I will say is there's ways to advocate for it. You go to the administration. Usually you have to meet with the vice principal, the principal, someone who's in an authoritative position, and they're able to help you along with ideally the teachers, whether you have one teacher and you're in elementary school or you have multiple teachers in middle or high school, or, professors in college. It's slightly different, but it's the same principle. And you can then get this set up for success so you are able to have a level playing field. So if God forbid something happens, you are covered. And so in a case like this, I had one, I think I started mine in middle school, If it wasn't middle school, it was like 8th grade, then going into high school. And so I had it where for exams, if there were any issues, if there were any absences, I could take them at a different time. If I had a low blood sugar, I could take them at a different time. If I had, a high blood sugar, technically I could take them at a different time. And things were a little more lax. I could leave the classroom when I needed to. My favorite was, and I don't know if this is even a thing anymore, but somehow, thank you to my parents, I'm very grateful, they were able to negotiate what was called a universal pass, which meant that, you have to get a pass, you go to the bathroom, you come back, like one kid can go at a time. I could just get up and go. If I needed to go to the bathroom and I had a high blood sugar, which, let's be real, going through puberty in high school, yeah, you're going to have some high blood sugars, you're going to have some nasty numbers. I would drink a ton of water as well because I knew how important hydration was. So I was drinking like the half-liter water bottle per class. I was peeing after every single class. There were times I had to pee during class. I could just get up and leave. And I wasn't going to get penalized for it. The hall monitor, where's your pass? And I'd be like, I have the universal pass. And I would just keep walking. And so because of things like that, I was able to be in a position where it wasn't held against me, right? My blood sugar was a little higher. I needed to walk around a little bit. I wasn't going to just leave class and walk in a circle. But at the same time, I could leave and say, okay, I'm going to walk a little bit to get this number starting to come down. And they knew, if it was 10 minutes, then it's a problem. But if it's, hey, he's gone for 5 minutes to get a few steps in, that's okay. And so again, these are different options. These are just things that I personally had, but there's plenty of other options. There's plenty of advocates. There's plenty of other people on social media that can explain some of their experience or their child's experience with this. But it's something that is super important to pay attention to have those accommodations to set you or your child up for success. In college, it was a little bit different. I had to meet with, I think it was like the Student Resource Center or something like that. And I had a whole separate thing because college, I guess the stakes were higher. I had to take my test in a separate room. I had a thing where I got extra time. So if I had a low blood sugar or I had a high blood sugar, I could wait it out. And so basically the clock would stop and I could wait it out. I think there was in grad school, the clock didn't stop, but they gave me a ton of extra time. So I could then, wait it out and I wasn't penalized because what happens if you're in the middle of taking, let's say you're taking organic chemistry and your blood sugar falls off a cliff and you're 50, you can barely think straight because organic chemistry is already hard at baseline. Then tack on a low blood sugar, good luck. You're in a huge disadvantage relative to everybody else. Now imagine they're grading on a curve. Well, you're in even more deep trouble. So these are situations that can help prevent that from being held against you. And because you have to apply for these for the SAT, the ACT, AP test. It can be a bit of a grind. I will say once you get the first set of accommodations done, so I would recommend, if you have a kid, getting them done in middle school because it's easier to transfer to high school. And then once you have them in high school, you have that same documentation that you then can bring to college, assuming you go to college. So for me, I remember a situation, I was taking an AP test and it was fun. I think it was AP English, which at that time, I don't know if it's typed now, it probably is, but it was written. And so you're writing like 3 essays and answering all these questions. And at some point, my blood sugar just crapped out. This was before CGM. This was before Dexcom. I needed to test with a finger stick and I felt real weird. And I tested, I don't remember my exact number, but I was in the 40s and it was not good. And I had to sit. It was one of those lows that just did not come up. So I remember sitting there. It was like a clear-ish office room. I took this in a separate place than all the other kids at the AP test. But I was in like an office room in the office proctored by someone there. I don't remember who it was, but I had to sit for almost 50 minutes to get my blood sugar back up. It was that nasty of a low. Had I not had that accommodation, I probably would have failed that AP test and ended up working out where my number went back to normal. I did very well on that test. I got college credit. It was great. But the reason I bring this up again is it should not be held against you, but you have to advocate for it because here's the thing. If I didn't say anything, I have diabetes, it's fine. You can have an agreement with the teacher. Hey, I have diabetes if something happens. And then it becomes up to them if they're going to be nice to you or not. If you have something formal, it has to be enforced. And so I'm always of the mentality of I'd rather have it and not need it, like an umbrella, versus need it and not have it. And then it comes down to the teacher or the professor's jurisdiction. And if they say, nope, tough, then that's it. And you unfortunately have that situation held against you. And I have heard of situations of students who have worked with my team and I who have had instances where blood sugars went low during an exam, blood sugars went high during an exam, something happened that was less than ideal. And as a result of that, they ended up doing poorly on a project or a test or something. And then they were not able to do as well in the class because of a diabetes related event. And what I don't want is that to happen to you or to your child. And again, it's going to take a little legwork up front, but like I mentioned before, you do it the first time, it's a lot easier to pass it down the chain. Just have to be willing to advocate and have to be willing to push through that first gatekeeper and push through that first no in case they try to give some resistance towards it. And again, for ACT, SAT, those, standardized tests, those are things where you are going to have to apply early for these accommodations. And you're going to have to probably just bring the same documentation that you brought to the first time where you got the 504. But then at that point, I remember every year, and it was hilarious. I'll bring this up in a second, but every year, even before I had this, my parents would come in, they'd have my teachers and, in the room, they would probably meet for, I don't know, 30, 40 minutes. It felt like forever when I was a kid. And they would go through, hey, this is what diabetes is. This is the symptoms, et cetera, what to look out for. And now being an adult, I'm sure the teachers were like, cool, whatever, let him do his thing. It doesn't really matter. I mean, back then, it means the world. You're, 10, you're 11, you're 12, right? Eventually, my parents had me start giving the presentation, which I didn't love, but it is what it is. I think it was probably good for me in looking back in retrospect. And with this, of course, then, the teachers can ask questions. Hey, if this happens, then what? And I remember we even would go so far as we'd have the old classic orange and the glucagon. It was expired glucagon. Most glucagons, I feel like, are expired at this point, but, an orange and a glucagon. And they would have to practice, taking it out and injecting it or whatever. We'd demonstrate for them once so they would see what was going on. But I think that kind of thing's important too, to, again, set that precedent before school starts to say, hey, this is the situation. Here's what to look out for. And again, you're not going to get special treatment from it, but it can help you in the event that's necessary. And there's times where, okay, a teacher can't show up and they get the memo after, et cetera. The moral of the story is you have to make sure that you are advocating for yourself, and you have to be the one that sets this up, because nobody's going to do it for you. If someone does it for you, you are in an amazing place, and I give you all of the props in the world, but more than likely, you are going to have to be the one that advocates for yourself. That's part one of the school equation, right? Is getting the infrastructure in place before you show up. And if you're listening to this, you're like, well, my kid starts tomorrow. I don't have time to do this. That's okay. It's still early enough to intervene. On the flip side, I wouldn't wait till next year. I would still try to get something going earlier, because it's better to get it done in September than it is to wait until the following year in case during that time something were to happen. Now, in terms of the day-to-day, right? School's obviously a lot of sitting. Sometimes there's gym, sometimes there's recess, depending on how old you are. I wish high school had recess. I think they need it, but regardless, I digress. But there's going to be usually limited activity. You're going to be potentially stressed. And a lot of times school starts really early. I remember in high school, I was there at 7:25, which I don't know how I did it, but you figure it out. But that can mean a lot of insulin resistance in the morning. So you have to be really willing to look at, what are you eating? Are you eating something? Whether you do or don't is up to you. But are you eating something? And then also, is that conducive to helping your blood sugar? Because I still vividly remember too, being in high school and just starting to learn about nutrition, starting to learn about lifting a little bit. But every single day, like clockwork, I would test my blood sugar around like 9:15, 9:30. And I had the accommodations to eat in class. Another thing you should definitely have is the ability to eat and drink in class. I don't know how I forgot about that, but end of a big deal. Because if you have low blood sugar, you shouldn't have to go walk across the school to go get a low snack. Like, just pull it out of your backpack and eat, regardless. And same with testing in class, using your phone in class. These are all things that should be part of your accommodations. But I vividly remember being in high school and testing, and I would always be like 250 because I was eating oatmeal at breakfast. And it's not that oatmeal is a problem. I had the packet stuff. It wasn't as good, in terms of dosing and in terms of stuff added to it. And there was probably, maple brown sugar and stuff like that. But regardless, the fact of the matter is I was very insulin resistant. I think my ratio was like 1:5. Like, it was stupid low, way lower than it is now. And you're sitting, you can't really move a whole lot. And on top of that, high carb, probably not going to be your best bet. So really think about what you're having from a breakfast perspective, because that's going to impact you probably all the way up until lunchtime. And then at that point, okay, cool. Maybe you're getting up, you're walking between classes. That's not a whole lot of activity. And then you're having lunch. And then you want to make sure at lunch you're set up for success the rest of the day. So all the meal principles that I've talked about on this show, that I've talked about on social media, if you're a patient of ours, stuff that we've talked about in sessions, making sure that you are applying those principles to school lunches for yourself or for your kid, because it is going to be paramount to ensuring that blood sugars end up in a good place during the school day. Because again, when your blood sugar is high, you can't focus, you can't think. Low blood sugar, same thing, but high blood sugar, I just want to nap. I want to curl up into a ball and nap, and I have no interest in anything that's going on in front of me. So because of that, the last thing I want to do is, oh yeah, this is great. I can't wait to go learn about geometry or trigonometry or I don't know, the other geometries, right? You get what I'm saying. I don't want to pay attention to that because all I want to do is nap because I feel like garbage. And so making sure you can maintain those better blood sugars is going to help you test better. It's going to help you retain information better. It's going to make your experience richer and a little bit easier. Having that down pat, knowing your breakfast dosing, making sure it's on time, making sure your dosing mechanism's in a good place. All these things are going to go a very long way. Snacks, of course, are going to be person dependent. And the other thing I'll say before I just continue to just ramble with all of this stuff, because I could probably go on this topic for an hour and a half. But another thing I would say is if you have a school nurse, I do think it's important to at least have them in the picture. My school, I remember in high school, our nurse was split between 3 different schools, so we didn't really have them all that often. And then some nurses just aren't helpful. Some nurses are super helpful. So if yours is super helpful, lean into that. If they're not super helpful, that's okay. Be willing to take the lead for you and or your kid. But the other thing is to ensure that your infrastructure is set up independent of the nurse. So, okay, if your kid is, 9, it's going to be a little different if, hey, they need to show someone their phone before they dose their pump, right? Or maybe, hey, I need to make sure that I used to have to show my insulin dose to whoever the administrator was. My school didn't even have a nurse in elementary school, but, show my insulin syringe back in the day, to whoever it was saying, hey, there's this much cloudy, there's this much clear, we're good to go, boom, versus let me just take it arbitrarily. But having those little fail safes in there, having someone who can kind of be a backup for you, I think would go a really long way as well. So try to get the nurse involved. Sometimes they will be, sometimes they won't be, but if they're helpful, lean into that for sure. Some are amazing, go over the moon for these kids. Some of them, hey, I've got extra snacks, I've got low stuff, I've got everything ready to go. Some of them, they just can't be bothered. And I hate to have to bring up both ends of the spectrum, but you don't know what you're going to get, especially if it's a new school. So really make sure that you're focusing on that as well. But again, everything that you can control under your power of, hey, is the dosing on point? What meals are at breakfast and lunch? Are there snacks even needed? Maybe they are, maybe they're not. But also overarching the entire thing, making sure that you got accommodations ready for you or your child and ensuring that they're set up to succeed or you're set up to succeed for the long haul. Because again, the last thing you want is something to be held against you that's not your fault, that something may go off the rails. And then for some reason, your grade or your child's grade doesn't go well because of an isolated incident. And it's not fair, ultimately, at the end of the day. All we want is a level playing field, and this will help level said playing field. Of course, the other principles of diabetes still apply, right? The protein's still going to be important at lunch, right? The activity throughout the day, if you can get it, or after school is going to be important. But this is some of the school-specific stuff that you need to know. Also, side note, can do a whole episode on this if I get enough demand on it. School lunches probably not going to be the best. But I can go into school lunches and lunch options in general in a future episode. But if you're enjoying this pod, definitely send me a message on social media, Instagram, TikTok, @manofzeel, MANOFTZEEL, or, leave an amazing review, Apple, Spotify, wherever you're listening. I greatly appreciate you. If you need support to work with the school system, if you need support to work on your blood sugars or your child's blood sugars, and you want someone who's going to go in depth with you to ensure that the blood sugars are amazing and actually cares, my team and I are here to help. Definitely check us out, yourdiabetesinsider.com. We're happy to support you however we can. We all live with it. We all get it. And with that, I will catch you in the next episode.
Hope you're ready for the next episode. Hey.